have the audacity to come here today and talk to us about principles and talk to us about oppression.
That's what it sounded like earlier this year at the University of Ottawa when a protester interrupted a speech by Canada's ambassador to the United Nations, Bob Rae. The gist of it was that Canada was funding Israel and Israel's an apartheid state and, well, you know the usual arguments. For Jewish pro-Israeli professors who teach at Ottawa U, that incident was just another example of how the atmosphere at their university and also on many Canadian campuses has become clearly anti-Israel in recent years. And it leaves them feeling very uncomfortable, they say. But worse, it also has a direct consequence on their academic freedom, on what they can research and how and with who. And in some cases, the faculty associations adopt resolutions that oppose the IHRA definition of antisemitism, even though the Canadian government and most Canadian provinces now have it on the books. In other cases, some of these professors' university departments have come out in support of the Palestinian campaign called BDS, or Boycott, Sanctions and Divestment of Israel, which means Israeli academics can't come to do research or even speak at conferences. So that's why 100 professors have now banded together to form a new network of engaged Canadian academics, or NECA for short. It's based on an American group doing similar work on U.S. campuses. The Canadians are in the process of setting up a website and seminars and resources to help members who find themselves ostracized for supporting Israel. Organizers say, aside from Ottawa's two universities, they have people now at McGill, McMaster, U of T, Western, and the University of Manitoba. Because while there are plenty of advocacy groups that help Jewish students on campus, professors who support Israel need help too.
What we really stand for is the promotion and protection of academic freedom on campus and the ability of people to fully express their Jewish identity, should they want to, which includes Jews who are Zionist and who support Israel.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Tuesday, May the 16th, 2023. Welcome to the CJN Daily, a podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, sponsored by Metropia. I'm coming to you this week from Ottawa, where I'm attending a conference of Jewish leaders organized by the Israeli Embassy. I'm also moderating one of the panels and will be bringing you some of the stories that we gather here. Sorry we weren't on the air on Monday. Just as I was preparing to record the episode, I came down with a stomach bug, but I'm fine now and we're back. As for the new Canadian network of engaged academics, it's a response to the growing climate on campuses where people who support social justice and progressive thinking, even including many Jewish professors, don't support Israel. One of the co-founders of the new Canadian network, Professor Deidre Butler of Carleton University's Zelikovitz Centre for Jewish Studies, has first-hand experience of anti-Semitism in her workplace. She's had Nazi symbols scribbled on her door and pushback when she wanted to take students in her religion course on a trip to Israel. Butler and her co-chair, Cary Kogan, a clinical psychology professor from Ottawa U, join me now from Ottawa.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Before we get started about, the more current activities, I'd love to hear the origin story of how you two met, how you decided that this was something that needed to be done.
Yeah, so I'm a clinical psychologist, a professor in clinical psychology. So I don't teach Jewish studies. I'm not in Jewish studies. I actually came to this issue in February of 2021 during the COVID lockdown, when our faculty union passed a motion against the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance working definition of anti-Semitism. And that really opened my eyes to the issues on campus. I was doing my thing, teaching and training and doing research. And, this really was a wake-up call. And so I started to learn about issues of anti-Semitism on campus, and had the great fortune, actually, of watching a podcast of Miriam Ellman from the Academic Engagement Network in the United States. And so they're a faculty organization, a not-for-profit that essentially helps faculty connect to each other across different U.S. campuses, and works to protect academic freedom, but also protect Jewish identity. and the rights of faculty and students and staff to express their Jewish identity on campuses, which has become increasingly a problem, not only in the States, but also in Canada. So through that connection, was able to just have a discussion about how can we actually bring this type of organization to Canada. We launched in January. Maybe Deidre has more to say about that.
Just that I'll say that I came to this as someone who does teach Jewish studies. And although, we're not here representing our own personal universities that we work for, we're here as Canadian academics. Really, in my position at Carleton University as director for the Centre for Jewish Studies, that becomes the meeting place where anything having to do with Jews and particularly anti-Semitism would come across my desk. And so I was dealing with the administration and the union and students and fellow faculty, and also working with other faculty members across Canada who teach Jewish studies. So I've been running a round table with Jewish studies profs for the last couple of years to really consult with each other and hearing kind of the state of anti-Semitism on Canadian campuses. So when this group started to be formed, I was really enthusiastic to work with them and to work with Cary in particular.
And I should add, the important point about having a network is that most professors working across disciplines that are not Jewish studies or Jewish history really don't have the language or the ability to really address issues that they know in their heart are real problems that they're seeing on campus.
What are they telling you?
I'll speak of myself. I teach a travel course that travels to Israel. I'm about to leave actually next week. And the last time I taught it, I had a sign on my door which advertised the course. And someone drew swastikas and Heil Hitler, spelled incorrectly, I will add. So we have examples of things like that. So property damage, vandalism, swastikas being scrawled on doors. But what's interesting is that whereas in the past, maybe you would have expected swastikas to be associated with the far right, with neo-Nazism, now what we see is a slippage between anti-Israel, anti-Zionism, and these symbols and these tropes being directed at faculty and students.
What did the university do about that, or what did you do about it?
So I reported it. I reported it as a hate crime at my university. I'm not sure that it was tracked as such. I would like to think that it was. Security did take it seriously. My dean and my chair did as well. And, they looked to see if there were any cameras. There weren't any, and that was the end of that.
Okay, Cary, what about you? Some examples?
Sure. Yeah, in addition to the example I gave about my union, which was problematic not only because it was taking a position against the consensus definition of anti-Semitism, but also was imbued with inflammatory language that was specifically anti-Israel. So essentially equating Israel with a racist state and a colonial settler state. So that language is now, enshrined in a union motion. So that's problematic. The other event that I was unfortunately on part of opposition to was the Palestinian Feminist Collective statement that is, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but this was a statement that went out around May 2021 when there was the conflict with Hamas, and that statement was extremely biased, had enormous problems around holding Israel essentially responsible. What we see in the academic world is a lot of concern about academic freedom. In this case, this was a statement that was signed by an entire unit at my university.
Not mine.
and yours, not by individuals. So academic freedom is something that an individual professor has as a right and privilege, but academic units, are extensions of the university. So to sign such an egregious statement, there's already a question about, the integrity and scholarship that is lacking in that statement. And then it really does serve as a litmus test, right? So either you are against Israel or and you're that makes you a good Jew, or you are
a good academic.
and a good academic. Exactly. So it's offensive on both grounds, both in terms of it being antithetical to scholarship, but also an attack, an assault on Jewish identity. So,
and we had the same issue at my university, and it also was signed. And there are also questions about whether untenured faculty or faculty who don't have the protection of secure employment, or graduate students, how they feel about having their names attached to it, because in effect, everyone having to do with that unit now has signed it, whether they intended to or not. And in fact, that shuts down the academic freedom of people to not have their name attached to it. So it's a very problematic situation.
It's just for post-secondary universities or colleges too?
Colleges as well. And in fact, we're already working with some college faculty who, interestingly enough, are finding their own work being shut down through the IHRA definition. So in a college where they had passed an anti-IHRA declaration, that anti-IHRA declaration is being used to shut down some research.
Tell me more about that.
Well, I can't tell you all of it because the case is ongoing, and we don't want to prejudice the case. But the issue has to do with how the research was actually looking into antisemitism in Canada. And one of the things that it referenced was the IHRA definition, and the union sanctioned, or is it attempting to sanction, one of the faculty members.
What campus is that? What school is that? What city?
I don't feel comfortable saying that because the case is ongoing right now.
The pro-Palestinian groups have said in studies this past year that said there's a chilling effect on Palestinian advocacy on campus, because every time we try to say something, the Jewish lobby shuts us down. So
I think we have to be really careful about that claim, because let's think about how things about Israel and Palestine are taught on our campuses. My campus, other than the fact that I take students to Israel, there are not voices that are articulating a description of the history of Israel, the history of Zionism, in a way that isn't very much slanted towards criticizing the state of Israel. Right?
You have a Jewish studies program. You have the...
Yeah, we don't have Israel studies. And the Zelikovitz Centre at Ottawa U is Canadian Jewish studies. So we don't have courses that are telling the story of Zionism, that take seriously how Jews understand that history, the mainstream of Jewish history. And I think that that's a serious problem. But beyond that, what we know is that undergraduate and graduate students are in classes because they have to take certain classes. And those classes are given by scholars who are integrating these kinds of accounts about Israel in their teaching when it's relevant or not. So you'll get a human rights class, let's say, that talks about Israel as a settler colonialist with no kind of other discussion as part of it. But you'll also have a physics teacher who will give a physics problem and make the example that be one that illustrates the injustice of how Israel treats Palestinians. Why give that example except to have an opportunity to continue that conversation?
These are things that have happened to you. You've heard about them.
I've heard about them, yes. The last one I would like to make about this question of silencing is who's doing the silencing here? When you have people who do very serious work on Palestinians and anti-Zionist work that are receiving the highest honors in our universities. I mean, certainly some of the highest honors at Carleton University have gone to scholars who are advocating these positions. And also, I mean, I've had 2 petitions written against me to silence me in different ways in terms of taking students to Israel. One in terms of the way that I talked about taking students to Israel, because I didn't call it the occupied Palestinian territories in a publication at the university. And the second one, because I was fundraising for my students to attend to lower the barrier to participation. And so they're not going after my academic freedom of teaching the course, but they're shutting me down in really important ways.
So what do you want your group to do? To be more of a support group, to have like strength in numbers and be able to do petitions and public statements when things come up, like have more power in numbers?
So NECA has a role, right, in providing resources and connecting people who have that experience and expertise in that area, and certainly being able to address, I think, what Deidre talked about, which is, the fact that our colleagues become part of this governance structure, and they, who are, often not Jewish, don't have, really that experience or knowledge about that subtle differentiation, understanding when things cross a line and understanding why. So I think that to have a network that's able to articulate those things and be a resource, not fly in unwelcomed onto campuses, but to work with those members on those campuses, those individual campuses across Canada, to address issues as they come up, and even to, in the case of EDI, prevent issues from coming up, right? I think that's really important. And I think what often, to your earlier point, often EDI officers or human rights officers, they just don't have the experience or the knowledge, right? And it is ignorance. It's not intentional. And they may actually get a very skewed view of things from whether it's the media or internal to the university about what is and what isn't anti-Semitism, that can then lead to some very problematic outcomes.
UJA's Walk with Israel is happening this Victoria Day, Monday, May 22nd. Join thousands of community members for the world's largest Israel Solidarity Walk, followed by an epic Israeli-themed beach party to celebrate Israel's 75th birthday. Get all the details by visiting walkwithisrael.com. This is our moment to unite as one strong and proud Jewish community. Religious and secular, left and right, Jews and allies, everyone belongs at the Walk with Israel. Register before May 19th, and if you use the promo code CJN, you can save 10% on all Walk Bundle packages. To register, visit walkwithisrael.com.
Where are you? How much activism are you going to be looking for?
I think before we get to promoting IHRA, what I really want to see is stopping the anti-IHRA resolutions. So at our union, their faculty, they attempted to pass an anti-IHRA resolution, and we pushed back. We explained to them this is incredibly divisive, that this is causing a problem where there is none, that this is, deeply troubling that you're trying to pass this without consulting with Jews. You're trying to get rid of a definition that is accepted by the federal government without any other solutions, so that we end up being silenced. That argument was actually really effective.
There are a lot of professors who are Jewish who don't agree with IHRA and are very vocal in BDS, anti-Israel criticism. How do you navigate, friendships, conversations, collegiality?
You raise a very important point. And this has been the battle, for example, that I had with the Palestinian Feminist Collective statement. Immediately when I opposed it, the response was from the only Jewish professor in that unit, who said, as a Jew, I disagree with your statement. And then it shut down the discourse, right? So unfortunately, what's happening is that there is really only one side being told and listened to, right? So it's those Jews who are, as you say, part of the progressive left, anti-Israel, who are being listened to by the unions, and that's sufficient. Rather than saying, well, actually, there's a much broader, heterogeneous community here.
Yeah, but the universities, they don't know that. The DEI people, they don't know the difference. And that's the interesting point. How do you yell louder?
So I do think there's a way to talk about this, to speak in language that they understand, to talk about, if you only listen to people who are critical of Israel and pro-BDS, you're not getting the lived experience of the majority of Jews in Canada, because the majority of Jews in Canada have a different perspective on their relationship to Israel. Saying things like nothing about us without us actually resonates very powerfully with this group. People who are interested in social justice and progressive kind of ideas hear those terms and they recognize where the problem is. if you can teach these people, if you can get them in the room and have a conversation with them, because we should be able to have these conversations and ask hard questions. No one should be shut down.
That's the academy. That's what it's meant for, is an exchange of ideas, and it should be an open exchange. And what we're seeing is it's a one-way exchange.
By the way, Palestinian Canadians held a media conference here in Ottawa yesterday, marking what they call the 75th anniversary of the Nakba. They called on the Canadian government to give official recognition to Nakba Day. Nakba is a term that means catastrophe, and it refers to the displacement of Palestinians when Israel declared independence on May 14th, 1948. And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily, sponsored by Metropia. Integrity, community, quality, and customer care. Today's listener shout-out goes to Professor David Burkeson in Calgary. And for those of you who want to meet us and meet the CJN Daily team and all your favorite CJN personalities, come on out to our booth on Monday, May the 22nd in Toronto at the Walk for Israel. We'll be at the Prosserman JCC campus at Bathurst and Shepherd from 11 to 3 during the after party. Come for the giveaways, say hello, and take a selfie with us. Hope to see you all there.